My wife secretly sold our family home for $500, $0 to her own sister behind my back, then filed for divorce claiming I was abusive. And now she's trying to take my inheritance of $300, $0 from my late mother, all while the court battles over the property get uglier by the day. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, trying to piece together how my wife turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. The most shocking part, it all started with a simple suspicion that somehow snowballed into a full-blown nightmare. I mean, I always thought we had a good marriage. Sure, we had our fights, but who doesn't? But over the last few months, little things started changing, small things that didn't add up. It began with her being unusually secretive about her phone. She'd hide it whenever I entered the room, and her texts became more frequent and secretive. I'd catch her deleting messages, and when I asked her about it, she'd brush it off, say she was texting her sister or a friend about some trivial stuff. But I knew better. Something was off. She'd also start working late more often, claiming she had to meet with clients or attend networking events. But I'd find her car parked at a different place, or her lying about where she was. One night, I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know, invasive, but at that point I was desperate for answers. What I found was a flood of messages with a guy named Jake. They'd been chatting for months, talking about sex, plans to meet up, and even explicit stuff. I saw pictures of her in lingerie, pictures she never told me she took. My stomach dropped. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? How could she betray me like that? I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and confusion. I mean, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We built a life together, 2 kids, a mortgage, a dog, and now I was looking at proof she'd been cheating on me behind my back. The worst part, she was lying to my face about everything, acting like everything was fine. She'd tell me she loved me, that I was overthinking, that she was just stressed. But I knew better. I'd seen her texts, her secret meetings, her lies. The next day I confronted her. I told her I knew about Jake, about the messages, about her lies. She looked stunned for a second, then her bitchy smirk appeared. "You're crazy, Mike," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're just jealous because I'm more successful than you. Jake's just a friend, you're overreacting." She everything, even when I showed her the messages on my phone. She called me paranoid, insecure, and said I was just trying to control her. But I just wanted honesty, I wanted respect. The emotional hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. First, disbelief. Then anger. Then sadness. How could the woman I loved so much do this to me? How could she lie so effortlessly? I'd always prided myself on being a good husband, working hard, providing for her and our kids, supporting her dreams. And now I felt like a fool. All those nights I stayed up worrying, all those times I thought she was just stressed or tired, she was out screwing around. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Every time I looked at her, I saw a stranger. And every time I thought about the money, our savings, the house, the future, that all suddenly felt meaningless. I started noticing more strange behaviors. Her withdrawing from the family, hiding things, her phone constantly glued to her hand. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that she'd been planning something for a while. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. How could she do this to me? To our family? I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there in front of me. After I found the messages and confronted, things escalated quickly. Her reaction was nothing short of manipulative. She looked me dead in the eyes and lied straight to my face, saying she didn't know what I was talking about, that I must have misunderstood. She claimed Jake was just an old friend she'd known forever, and that I was overreacting because I was insecure, that she loved me and our family, and that I was just paranoid. I knew she was lying. Her tone, her body language, everything about her changed. She was defensive, aggressive even. When I pressed her further, she snapped back, accusing me of spying, of not trusting her, and of being crazy. She said I was just jealous because she was more successful. She's a real bitch when she's cornered. She started throwing around accusations of my own, saying I was emotionally abusive, that I was controlling and paranoid. I felt my blood boiling. How dare she turn this around on me? In the days that followed, I couldn't get her out of my head. I was furious but also deeply hurt. I started digging into her phone more, looking for anything I might have missed. That's when I found out about the house. She secretly sold our family home to her sister for $500, $0 behind my back. I was stunned. She told me she was downsizing, that she wanted a smaller place for the kids, but in reality she'd been planning this for months. She hidden the sale from me, and I only found out because I came across some documents on her laptop. The house was our biggest asset, and she'd transferred ownership to her sister, who, by the way, paid her a fraction of what it was worth. I felt like I'd been punched again. How could she do this? How could she sell our family home without even telling me? I'd always thought we shared everything, but she was clearly hiding a ton. And then I found out she also filed for divorce, claiming I was abusive. That was the last straw. I knew I had to act fast. The divorce papers were already in the system, and she was trying to take everything. Our house, my inheritance from my late mother, all while painting herself as the innocent victim. I found out she was also trying to claim my inheritance of $300, $0, which was supposed to come from my mother's estate. She knew I was supposed to get that money, and now she was scheming to take it all. It was a mess, and I was just getting started. I started documenting everything, screenshots of her messages, copies of the sale documents, her divorce filings, everything. I knew I needed proof to fight her in court. Meanwhile, was acting even more bitchy and entitled. She'd insult me in front of the kids, claim I was an unfit father, and do everything she could to paint me as the bad guy. It was surreal. The emotional toll was immense. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless. I'd worked so hard to build a life with her, and now I was watching it crumble because she was a liar and a thief. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen this coming, how I'd been so blind. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who'd betray her own family for money and a new life. I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I knew I had to fight back, not just for the house or the inheritance, but for my dignity. I had to protect what was left of my family, and I had to make her pay for what she'd done. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, even if it meant going to war in court. The anger inside me was building, but underneath it all, there was a deep sadness. I loved her once, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd betrayed everything we built together. The more I dug into her lies, the clearer it became that had planned this entire betrayal for months. Selling the house behind my back, filing for divorce with false accusations, trying to grab my inheritance. She was playing a long game, and I was just starting to realize how deep the rabbit hole went. I felt sick every time I thought about how much I'd trusted her, how I'd believed in our marriage. Now, all I saw was a woman who'd sell her own family out for her own greed. I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to do something. I started reaching out to a lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and estate disputes. I knew I needed legal advice, especially with her trying to take my inheritance and the house. My lawyer, a sharp guy named David, told me I had a solid case if I could prove her deception, especially about the house sale and the false divorce accusations. But it wouldn't be easy. Was smart, and she had already started spinning her lies to the court. She was claiming I'd been abusive, that I'd hit her or yelled at her in front of the kids. She painted herself as the innocent victim, while I was the villain. That's when I realized I had to turn the tables. I started gathering evidence of her affair with Jake, her secret sale of the house, and her attempts to manipulate the divorce proceedings. I also hired a private investigator, just to confirm what I already suspected, that she'd been sneaking around with Jake and hiding money from me. The PI found some pretty damning stuff, photos of her with Jake in a hotel, receipts from her secret meetings, and even some voice recordings where she admitted she was done with the marriage, but wanted to keep the house and the money. Meanwhile, his attitude was getting even more bitchy and entitled. She'd throw tantrums in front of the kids, call me names, and accuse me of being a controlling monster. She'd scream that I was abusive, that I'd never really loved her, and that I was just jealous of her success. But I knew the truth. She was the one. Cheating, scheming, and lying her way into a new life. And I was the one left to pick up the pieces. One night, I decided I'd had enough of her lies. I sat down with the kids and told them the truth. Nothing too detailed, but enough to let them know that their mother was not the person they thought she was. It was heartbreaking to see their confused faces. I didn't want to poison them, but I also didn't want her to keep hiding the truth. I promised myself I'd do everything I could to protect them from her manipulations. The next step was confronting her again, this time armed with all the evidence. I sent her a detailed email, listing everything I'd found: the sale of the house, her affair with Jake, her attempts to manipulate the divorce, and her lies to the court. I told her I wasn't going to let her steal our assets or ruin my reputation. I warned her that I had enough proof to fight her in court, and I was prepared to do so. Her reaction was typical. She called me a liar, a jealous loser, and said I was just trying to ruin her. She accused me of trying to keep her from finding happiness, which made me laugh bitterly. Happiness. She'd already destroyed that. All I wanted was fairness, honesty, and to protect what little I had left. The court battles started heating up. The lawyer tried to dismiss all my evidence, but I had enough to show her true colors. Every day, the fight got uglier. She'd bring up all my supposed faults, try to cast me as the bad guy, and manipulate the judge with her bitchy attitude. Meanwhile, I was doing everything I could to stay calm and focused, knowing that this was about more than just money or a house. It was about my reputation, my future, and my kids' stability. Honestly, I felt like I was fighting a losing battle some days, was relentless, and her lies seemed to pile up faster than I could counter them. But I refused to give up. I knew I had the truth on my side, and I was determined to expose her for who she really was, an opportunist who'd sell her own family out for a quick dollar. The emotional toll was enormous, but I kept telling myself that justice would prevail, even if it took everything I had. The court proceedings dragged on, and every day felt like a new assault. Attitude grew even more arrogant and bitchy. She'd show up to court looking like she owned the place, throwing her weight around, acting like she was the victim. She'd lie through her teeth about everything, saying she never sold the house, that I was controlling, that I'd been emotionally abusive. She was good at spinning her stories, but I had the evidence to blow her lies apart. I remember one particularly ugly court hearing. Sat there, smirking and flipping her hair as her lawyer tried to dismiss my proof of her affair and the house sale. I felt a mixture of rage and frustration. I had all the screenshots, the sale documents, the voice recordings, and yet she was still trying to manipulate the court. It was infuriating. I could see the judge was skeptical, but I knew I had a case. I just had to hold on long enough to make her see the truth. Meanwhile, tactics got more aggressive. She started accusing me of being an unfit father, claiming I was dangerous and unstable. She'd tell the court I'd hit her or yelled at her in front of the kids, which was a blatant lie. I never laid a finger on her, but I knew she was good at twisting things, and I had to be careful. I kept a journal of everything: incidents, conversations, her lies. I also hired a child psychologist to evaluate the kids' well-being, just in case she tried to turn them against me. The worst part was watching her try to steal my inheritance. I found out she'd been secretly talking to her lawyer about claiming the $300, $0 from my late mother's estate. I had the documents proving I was the rightful heir, but she was scheming to manipulate the court into awarding her part of it. She knew I was supposed to get that money, and she was trying to dip her fingers into it before I even had access. I felt sick thinking about how far she'd go to get her hands on my assets. One day, I caught her trying to bribe the kids to say things that would make me look bad. She offered them money, toys, or trips if they said I was abusive or that I didn't care about them. That was the lowest point for me. Seeing her manipulate my own children made me realize how dangerous she'd become. I knew I had to protect them from her lies and her greed. I reported her to the court, providing evidence of her trying to buy their loyalty. Through all this chaos, I felt a strange mixture of heartbreak and determination. I loved once, but I couldn't ignore the fact that she'd betrayed everything we'd built. Our marriage was a sham now. Her lies had torn us apart. I was angry at her, yes, but also deeply hurt. How could she turn into this manipulative, bitchy person? How could she sell our home, try to steal my inheritance, and then lie about everything in court? Despite all the ugliness, I refused to back down. I kept fighting, even when it seemed hopeless. I knew I had the truth on my side, and I was willing to go to any length to protect what was mine. I also started thinking about how to rebuild my life, even if that meant starting over from nothing. The betrayal had cut deep, but I realized I couldn't let her win. I owed it to myself and my kids to stand firm and expose her for who she really was, an opportunist and a liar who'd do anything for money and control. The court battles went on for what felt like an eternity. Attitude only worsened. She became more aggressive, more bitchy, and more manipulative with every hearing. She'd show up dressed to impress, smirking when she knew she was twisting the truth, acting like she was the victim. It was infuriating to see her play the victim, especially when I had mountains of evidence proving her lies. I knew she was trying to wear me down, hoping I'd give up or lose my temper. One day, during a particularly heated hearing, this lawyer tried to dismiss my evidence of her affair. They argued that my proof was hearsay and irrelevant. That's when I realized how desperate she was getting. I stood there, feeling a mix of rage and determination, and handed over the voice recordings I'd made. I played a snippet of her admitting she was cheating, and her lawyer's face turned white. The judge looked at her, then at me, and I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. That was a turning point. I knew I had her cornered. Meanwhile, was trying to manipulate the kids more overtly. Tell them I was dangerous, that I didn't love them, and even offered bribes. I caught her trying to buy their loyalty with trips and expensive gadgets, hoping to sway them against me. That broke something inside me. I felt a surge of protectiveness and anger. I immediately reported her to the court, providing the evidence of her trying to bribe the children. I knew I had to shield them from her lies. But the biggest blow came when I discovered her plans to claim my inheritance from my mother's estate. She'd been secretly talking to her lawyer about how to get her hands on the $300, $0 I was supposed to inherit. I had all the documents showing I was the rightful heir, but she was scheming to manipulate the court into awarding her part of the estate. It felt like everything was crumbling around me. How could she be so ruthless? She was willing to destroy our family, steal my inheritance, and ruin me just to get what she wanted. Despite all this, I refused to give up. I kept gathering evidence, talking to my lawyer, and preparing for the final showdown. I knew it was dangerous. She'd lie, cheat, and manipulate her way through anything. But I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. I started thinking about the future, about moving on, about rebuilding my life without her. The pain was still there, but I knew I couldn't let her break me completely. One night I sat alone, staring at the documents and recordings. I felt exhausted, emotionally drained, but also strangely calm. I realized I'd learned a lot through this ordeal. I'd learned that trust is fragile and people can hide their true selves behind a mask. I'd learned that some people will do anything for money, even if it means destroying their own family. And I'd learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, is the only way to truly move forward. I promised myself that no matter how ugly things got, I wouldn't let her win. I'd fight for my rights, for my kids, and for my sanity. Because at the end of the day, I knew the truth, and that's what mattered most. The final court hearing was the most intense day of all. His lawyer tried every trick in the book, more lies, more manipulations, even attempting to discredit my character. But I had everything on my side: the recordings, the documents, the testimonies. I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief as I sat in that courtroom. It was like all the pain, anger, and frustration had built up to this moment, and I had to stay strong. When the judge finally made his ruling, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The court sided with me on most issues, awarding me the house, confirming my inheritance rights, and dismissing false claims of abuse. She looked furious, her bitchy smirk replaced with a scowl of defeat. She tried to argue, to threaten, but the judge had seen enough. The truth had come out and justice was done. After the court session, I felt a strange sense of closure. I knew the battle wasn't entirely over, was still trying to manipulate things behind the scenes, but I had won the legal war. I finally had control over what was left of my life. I moved out of the house that day, not because I wanted to, but because I knew staying there would only remind me of the betrayal. I found a small apartment nearby, just enough to start fresh. Reflecting on everything that happened, I realized I'd learned some crucial lessons. Trust is fragile, and people can hide their true selves behind a mask. I learned that greed and selfishness can turn someone into a liar and manipulator. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, is the only way to reclaim your life. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty, collect evidence, fight fire with fire. Because if you don't, they'll take everything you care about. I've come to accept that my marriage was a lie, and its true nature was revealed too late. But I'm grateful I fought for what was mine. I'm grateful I protected my kids from her lies and manipulation. And I'm finally ready to move on, to rebuild my life, and to find happiness again, on my own terms. To anyone out there going through something similar, don't underestimate the power of evidence, and don't be afraid to stand your ground. People will try to manipulate and deceive, but the truth always comes out in the end. Trust your instincts, gather your proof, and fight for what's right. Because at the end of the day, your integrity and sanity are worth more than any material possession or false image someone tries to sell you.